Hey, welcome back to my channel. I am Yelizaveta, and I'm here to help you refine your tango on the social dance floor. As promised, today we are talking about this very common situation for some dancers of dancing in flats and having to follow somebody who is much, much taller than you. Last week, I covered some of the techniques you can use to dance in flats in general. So, some of those are a great primer to already understand. So, if you didn't get a chance to see last week's lesson, go ahead and do that first. And today, we're going to build on that and talk about what else you can do to help yourself when dancing with someone who is much taller than you and you're dancing in flats. Now, if by the end of this lesson, you're curious to learn more about techniques for balancing and aligning yourself correctly for dancing tango, do check out my online program called I'm So Tango School Online. The link is in the show notes. I would love to have you in there, would love to help you further if you need it. Now, everything that I'm going to talk about, you will actually get to see it in action in a video that I will share later in this recording of me dancing with a friend of mine who is pretty tall. He is, I would say, much taller than me. And I used to dance with him in heels when we first started dancing in 2014. I used to dance in heels. So when I shifted to dancing in flats, I had to kind of relearn how to dance with somebody who is that much taller than me. So all the techniques that I share with you are things I had to work out for myself, but you might also have some tips and tricks up your sleeve for doing this successfully. So if you have some advice for dancing with much taller partners when you're dancing in flats as a follower, do pop them in to the comments. I'm sure many people would appreciate more help on this, so do share your thoughts. We're going to start at the ground, of course. When I'm lifting to meet my partner who is much taller, I want to lift my heel off the ground, and as I'm connecting with him, at the same time, I want to feel that I'm as much as possible pulling my heel down. So you will see when I'm dancing with my friend in the video that my feet move from this position where my heel is all the way on the ground to this position. So some steps I go up to here, but then I come down. And so how do I make that decision? When do I choose to keep my heel on the ground? And then when do I choose to actually lift my heel? I want my heel on the ground as much as possible, no matter what, because I want my feet to get a break as much as possible from being lifted. So anytime that I have the opportunity to move the foot through the full range of motion and or allow the foot to relax into its natural or more relaxed position, I take that opportunity, especially when dancing with somebody tall. But when I do feel that I need to connect with my partner and I need to go up, I allow myself to go up. So once you have the feeling of the feet are going to be moving through these positions. Anytime you're dancing with any dancer in flats, but particularly when you're dancing with somebody taller, I just want you to have this in your mind that you should not expect to dance with somebody who's really tall being on your toes the whole time. If you have to do that, at some point you might decide not to dance with that person. There is a dancer I know that is too tall for me. It's too uncomfortable. So there are limits to how you can adapt, and you have to decide that for yourself. Now, once we have our feet figured out, the rest of the body falls into that space that we've created in the feet. You want to allow the rest of the body to articulate as naturally as possible, which brings me to talk about the two most common places where there are issues for followers when they start dancing with somebody really tall. One happens here at the place of right around sort of below the bra line, kind of before it becomes the lower back. The solar plexus in the front is sort of the measure of where this spot is. Your lower ribs, that's also a spot that you can identify. When we take an embrace with somebody much taller, it's very easy for me to just lift the arms and also allow myself to come forward with my ribs here. So if that happens, then that will collapse me into the leader and it messes up my axis. So it creates a lot of tension. So one thing that we want to watch out for is that the ribs need to stay in to the body. And you'll notice when I dance with my partner in the video, there's a little bit of oscillation between us being completely touching versus there's a little bit of space. And this space is what allows me to stay aligned on my axis. So I'm really paying attention that my axis stays integrated and my spine stays connected all the way through, rather than my spine breaking its alignment. And now I have to deal with the fact that I'm slightly in my toes. The other thing that this does, which I feel is a leader, if I'm dancing with somebody who is much shorter than me, which is what we're going to cover next week, don't worry. I did get some questions about that, so I will cover that in the next lesson. But what happens a lot for followers who end up pushing the ribs out too much, especially if you dance with somebody much taller, so let's say you're here, is that your back step, if you're being led to take a back step on a turn, for example, you're being led to take a back side forward, let's say, this back step is going to be cut short because this will prevent you from being able to rotate and aim your foot further back. So on the same step, if I'm forced to take that pivot back step here, it will land about here. But if my ribs are in, I can actually pivot and go further, and my step is actually going to be landing in a different place. The second main place where there usually are issues that arise that prevent followers from feeling comfortable when dancing with taller leaders is the shoulder area. Very often we learn a particular position and then we believe that this is the position we have to hold all the time. So every move that's done, the position is held in the shoulders and the shoulder blades are sort of fixed. So if you have that belief that your embrace is supposed to stay very fixed, when you take an embrace with somebody much taller, this arm is going to get really stuck, either on top of their arm or because you feel like you're supposed to hold this shape, you'll be kind of making yourself more stiff because you're sort of trying to fight something. And so the big secret with somebody taller, especially in close embrace, because this is really where the challenge lies, right, is to allow your shoulder, especially the left one, to become mobile. Okay, so allow it to relax. So when I take the embrace with my really tall partner, when I reach up, I allow the shoulder blade of my left shoulder to mobilize. And when I'm having to move around him inside the embrace, what I do is I allow my shoulder blade to articulate so I can move around it here. You see how I can allow there to be some motion. And that way my axis doesn't really get affected. So when you see him walking around me, or at one point he leads me to do repeated boleos and he's walking around me, the way I'm staying upright is I'm making sure that I'm releasing here this enough so that then my core can hold the line of my spine without interruption. So these two pieces up top, the ribs coming forward and the shoulder, they sort of work in tandem when you come close to your partner. Instead of reaching your ribs forward and keeping the shoulder with you, so it forces you into this position, instead allow the ribs to come in and allow the shoulder to release. You see? Because what we're wanting is to retain the natural alignment of the spine so that you're not disturbed in your axis when you're dancing with somebody much taller. Now, of course, for leaders, there's some technique involved, so I will talk about this next time. But for now, let's watch this clip and see these pieces in action. I'll see you in a minute.
Adelina madrecita, se refleja en tu dulce semblante el tormento que pasaste en instantes de dolor. Cuando yo tu hijo amado, por obra de aquel amor, lloraba desesperado, muerto ya en mi corazón.
Okay, so hopefully you saw some of those principles at work. When it comes to my footwork and how I'm placing my feet, I'm really applying the tools that I talked about in the lesson last week. And when it comes to how I adapt to my friend's lead because he's so tall, it really has to do with unlocking this upper part of the embrace. Now, I will say that for some followers, reaching the arm up like this all the way might be uncomfortable. You might be dealing with a shoulder injury that led to some sort of limitation, or maybe you just have difficulty holding your arm up like that and creates a lot of tension. You want to listen to that. And first of all, that might mean that you decide not to dance with certain people in close embrace, right? You might open up the embrace and tell them that you need to dance in open embrace. But the other less typical, less conventional solution as well, which I've seen in action with a leader and a follower, where the leader was probably 6'4" and the follower was, 5'3". And the way they made it work is that the follower's arm was underneath the leader's arm. So if I'm holding my follower here, their arm, instead of draping on top of mine, it would be here. It's an unusual kind of embrace. It's a little different, but it's on limits. And it's possible if you really want to dance with somebody and you want it to be close embrace, but you just can't reach so high and you can't be on your toes all the time, to make it comfortable, just allow for that arm to relax underneath the leader's arm. Now, I hope you join me next Saturday. We'll be talking about what exactly should you be doing as a very tall leader, how to make it more comfortable for your followers so that they're not straining. If you have questions or thoughts about the topic today, or you have specific questions that you want me to cover in future, go ahead and pop those into the comments below. And I look forward to seeing you next Saturday. Ciao.